politics means that people did it, people do it. Understand that when in San Francisco and other places that were never really there. I bet this ocean thinks it's an ocean, but it's not. It's just 6th and Mission Street. All know who's king.
That was an excerpt from The Course of Meal, a poem by Tongo Eisen-Martin. I'm your host, Jeff Hunt. Welcome to Storied San Francisco, a weekly podcast where San Franciscans from all walks of life share their stories, and you get to know your neighbors. In this episode, Tongo picks up where he left off in part 1, describing the San Francisco he returned to after a few years in New York City. He goes on to talk about a job he had teaching imprisoned youth and how it led to disillusionment despite his love of teaching and kids. He left the city again briefly for Jackson, Mississippi, where he started to dabble in poetry. Upon his return, he started reading his poems in front of folks, and he soon got noticed. Tongo ends this podcast with a full reading of The Course of Meal. Here's Tongo.
And there's always been like kind of a more intellectual culture in the Bay Area, you know. Maybe, you know, like this is what made, you know, Black Panthers possible. This is what made the Summer of Love possible. Like there's always something, though there's not the same kind of Jurassic activity or the same scale of venue. You know, you don't have a, you know, you don't have a Carnegie Hall equivalent, right. But you know, it's still just kind of like the quality of the everyday conversation was always, you know, it was a little bit more stimulating. I found in other places I've been. So like when I got to New York, I didn't feel like slow.
Right.
I didn't feel like anything was going on faster than what I was, you know, than what I was capable of. Mm-hmm. But I did kind of just like, you know, I missed almost like the thesis statement of the Bay Area, this thesis statement of San Francisco that no, you know, we can exist on the other end of the spectrum from like, you know, kind of white supremacist ideals of what a family is supposed to look like, what a, you know, what your ambition is supposed to look like, what a culture is supposed to look like, you know. And that the people really, you know, the people really run things, you know, and the people's imagination can actually be codified and actually institutionalized, you know, like I remember going to meme troupe, you know, going to the meme troupe plays, you know, my godmother is one of the, is a visual artist and did a few of the murals around, you know, around the city, around the mission, like, I remember helping her paint.
Oh shit! You
know, a mural. So you know, so that spirit is something I always, you know, loved returning to. But
yeah, so what you came back to
was a corporate reimagining of that spirit, you know, and so which was kind of like an interesting insight in that it's not so you think it's a place attracts talent and it's this talent that makes a place strong, but it's actually the people, man. So when the base is gone, then all of these scenes suffer. It's really the people that make the Renaissance. It's the audience that makes the Renaissance, and all these kind of like in the entire you know, kind of social ecosystems that artists, you know, develop in that enhance in the craft and create, you know, innovations. And, you know, craft only gets modernized within a pot with the people in it. So seeing the people gone is really, you know, this kind of like this undertow, this perpetual undertow pulling us down into this nothingness. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I don't mean the nothingness from which form, you know, emerging. I mean the nothingness from the never-ending story, man. That was just, you know, that had to tray you on the run. I think that the thing is that you know, money always comes or people with money, the ruling class, always come with too many deep contradictions for anything to ever really be stable, including their hegemony.
Right.
So it's
their own system is unstable.
Right, and constantly sowing the seeds of its own destruction. Mm-hmm. So in that sense, that you know, it's only a matter of time. It's just the suffering that happens along the way for them to maintain that power and control, and this especially kind of extroverted cultural dominance. See, before, I mean, we've had corporate employees since the beginning, you know, of our sentient understanding of things, but they were more like in the shadows. You know, they had their little, you know, they were in their offices, and then of course they had their little playgrounds, you know. But the streets really belong to the people. Now you have this almost a very ostentatious ruling class that has declared that the city is going to be their corporate campus. Right. But
too many examples to list of that.
And in order to pull that off, then we got, you know, then all these people got to be homeless. We got all these tent cities. We still have these extrajudicial killing. You know, we got Mario Wood, really as a part of this ethnic cleansing effort against Black and brown people here. So it's not like, oh well, let's just sit up and wait for them to fall off of their wall. But you know, but still, you know, art actually being an extension of love and actually an extension of the mass potential. Definitely, I would always put my money on the people, no pun intended.
Right on. Can we go back, because I think this is related? You said around 2009 or so, and you're like I'm out of the 9 to 5. What happened next?
Well, actually, so the 9 to 5 started in 2009.
Sorry.
Final chapter, and then so 2012. You know, what really broke the camel's back was so when I first started, I was given this like complete autonomy of curriculum. Within this little school. It was like, do what you want. There wasn't a lot to lose. There was only like, you know, 6, 7 kids showing up every day, and they were doing these independent study packets, which I don't know if you want that story, but it was ridiculous.
If you want to tell it.
Well, so basically, I don't know how long ago or how far away the galaxy was, but some people said, okay, for single parents who want to go back and get their high school degrees, we can create these independent study packets. And so basically it's like a packet that's supposed to simulate a class, and it's for people who are literally either at work or at home with kids. Like they can't go to a school, right? So you give them this independent study packet, and they can fill it out in the evening. And for every packet they get complete, it's worth a credit or 2.
Okay.
So you just do all of these packets, and then you get a high school diploma. All right. What happened? Jail schools took them and started giving them to people who were in solitary confinement. Once that happened, and I don't know exactly how the money worked. I'm assuming funding was per people you had on the packet. But some of these places, they decided that, well, they can do community partnerships and then facilitate packets in places like, you know, truancy programs, or, you know, I think their packets were being distributed in some kind of like halfway houses and stuff like that. So here are these kids that are coming in from, you know, coming from a position of absolute powerlessness. And they like, okay, they're trying to get back in the swing, and instead of giving them, actually teaching them, they're giving them packets.
Right. It's very would you call it? It's lazy and shady. Yeah, it's irresponsible.
Yeah, it's a violation of human rights, my friend.
Exactly. Yeah.
So here I come. And I told them, like, okay, I'll take this class, but I'm not going to teach these packets.
Right.
I'm going to do real class.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, yeah, fine, do what you want. Okay. So over the years, it actually got really, really groovy in there. And it grew. And we were getting like kid recommendations. People would just bring their cousins to the school. Like, my cousin, he hasn't been to school in a long time. Can he attend? And it was, you know, and we got up to a roster of about 40, 50,
wow.
maybe even 60 kids. We had to add a whole nother session, you know, like, you know, it was expanding. And once it expanded, what did the administration say? Can you put the packets in? Can you put the packets back in the game? Man. You know, and so that's when I was like, okay, you know, like, you know, the concept of alienation of labor, right? So that basically the idea is, as a worker, what you sell, the commodity you have, is your labor.
Okay.
That's what a job is. You are selling your labor to a capitalist, right?
Right.
Now, what happens though is that labor, once you give it to the capitalists, they do what they want, and it's in their interest actually to pay you as little as possible.
Right.
And therefore keep a system going in which you are really coerced to stay in this cycle, right?
And dependent on it, yeah.
Exactly. So the thing is that now you've sold your labor, one, but then your labor becomes alien to you. And actually becomes enemy to you, because you're serving it. The labor goes into building up an interest that is against your own.
Right. It's not yours.
Labor, right. So now this term was applied to cats, you know, working. This was invented when investigating like cats that were working in factories, you know, like manual labor, blue collar type of shit, right? So, but now if what I kind of like, and probably didn't innovate this understanding, I'm sure people have talked about this, but the petty bourgeois also suffer from alienation of labor, and that all of what I've done still belongs to this institution that will turn around and take this power I've given them and basically mess over all of our lives.
Yeah.
Put the kids back on the packets and basically, almost in a way, not to be dramatic, dehumanize me, literally, in reducing me to a packet proctor.
Right.
You know, now how much of my mind do I have to turn off in order to facilitate packets? And then again,
from their point of view, if you have the packets, you don't even need a teacher.
Exactly.
Automation. It's the same idea.
Right. And so it's right. Exactly. So it's automotive kids, automotive teachers. And so that's when I came to the conclusion that there's only so much that you can do from within the system. And then also, you know, education is really just flows from love, right? How much love can I actually have for you? And I did some work in the Oakland Juvenile Hall, and this really, like, I'd actually be in tears leaving the Oakland Juvenile Hall, because it's like, how much love can I have if I allow you to be messed over for the rest of the day, or allow you to go back to conditions that are inhumane,
right?
You know, and so I'm like, well, okay, well, I have to do something about the other 22 hours in the day, and that's where I enter the movement process. That's the angle that's what pushed me into that work. So I actually, I didn't know exactly what to do, but there were some people getting down in Jackson, Mississippi, who I had certain connections to, and so I went down there for a couple of years and did some movement work down there, and then came back in 2015.
Okay,
and I've been back ever since.
So what have you been doing the last? Was you said 5 years in SF?
So 5, I'll be damned if the poetry did not kind of take off, and it was trippy. So a kind of a more disciplined writing practice began for me in Mississippi, Okay. Almost, just if I'm honest, just from a lack of shit to do. I started putting the timer on, man, and it was actually based on a conversation that my brother had with Walter Mosley. My brother is an actor, and Walter Mosley, the cat who
I know that name.
Devil in a Blue Dress. It was made into a movie.
Okay.
He writes these kind of like detective mysteries, but they're beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And so he wrote a play, and my brother was in it, but so it's his, it's more of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Walter Mosley is, coming, right, is gonna write a play. So he was there and more hands-on, and he would have conversations with my brother. And my brother was telling him about Poetry Month in April, where you're supposed to write a poem a day, right?
Oh, right.
And Walter Mosley was just like, a poem a day? Nah, man, if you're gonna be a writer, you gotta write hours a day. That's how this thing works.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of secondhand took that and just started putting the timer on. And got to like a really groovy place, started writing some poems that just, it was kind of like a new species of poem. It really kind of blew my mind. But I still, that still wasn't kind of like my central identity. So I get back to the Bay, and a friend of mine, this cat named Derek Fenner, who I actually met and worked with or worked under in one of these Oakland Juvenile Hall programs. He got me a job teaching creative writing at one of these what they call gateway programs, where it's basically, the premise is you have kids that dropped out or stopped going to high school for whatever reason, but now they're only 19 or 20. And so you can't put them back with, when they want to, get back with their education, you can't put them back with kids.
17-year-olds.
But you also don't want to put them with 50-year-olds either. Right. So what do? You have a community college house, kind of like a continuation school for them, and then transition them into the community college system once they finish their credits. So I was teaching creative writing in one of those, and I was just kind of, I'm not going to say bored, but I was partially bored with just, this whole time I kept things separate. I always felt like teaching was a craft in itself that had to be respected. Mm-hmm. And so when I was in a place, when I was in an institution or a program or whatever, I would just keep it on that. Mm-hmm. But this time around, I wanted to, I started just busting poems, Right. I had these groovy poems, I just started saying them, and probably throw my weight around a little bit, like, let them know, no, you being taught by,
like you're the real deal.
Tongo Martin, unknown, but still great, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So come to find out, so it was this kid had come up. It was a groovy kid, one of these really just too smart. Like almost like the cliche, like so smart he's mischievous and therefore ends up in this kind of trouble. But
too smart for school.
Right, too smart for school, but he's literally too smart. Like that's all that's really going on. So he comes up to me, and actually I wasn't even teaching him at the time. He's just like, "Oh, I heard you actually got good poems." Mm-hmm. And I said, "Yes, I do. Would you like to hear one?" And Derek was standing there, kind of overheard it, and was like, "I got a small press. Do you want to do a book?" And so, I was like, "For sure." The thing about this kind of like more literary poetry is, you don't really know where it is. Like when it comes to like as opposed to like a kind of a slam scene. Right. Where, or back in New York, say the New York Poets Cafe, right? So they have upper echelon events, but then they also have like a night that's just open mic, Mm-hmm. And so if you like, I want to be a poet, you can go down there and start from scratch and work on your craft and move up and move along and all of these type of things. But when it comes to like the more literary side, or so-called literary, what believes is more literary, it's really behind these kind of closed doors. Yes, there are events in kind of like bookstores. There are bookstore events that do kind of have like a populism to them. But for the most part, like it's so much you would never know where to start. If you would say, I'm gonna be a poet, you would never know where to go.
Right.
And so, but it was through this book with Derek, it got me like 2-3 gigs behind closed doors. And then it was just like one thing kept leading to another until I ended up actually opening for a brilliant writer named Chinaka Hodge, actually who I've known since she was one of the first, like the first generation member of the Avengers, you know, like the youth speaks poets, you know, when they had kids and they'd take them around the world because they were just so good.
Right.
And so fast forward, she was having a book release with City Lights Books, and she told me to open for her.
Okay.
And so I opened for her, and the head publisher there was just like, whoa, let's do something.
Let's talk.
And you know, and it was some months later. I'm not the best at that type of thing, these type of relationships, but finally she got her hands on the manuscript and she was just like, whoa, I don't know how you did this. And asked me if I wanted to be in the Pocket Poet series, which is like their flagship. You know, that's what Howl comes out of. That's what
City Lights.
Yeah, you know, that's right. What it's kind of like the book deal within the book deal. You know, it's like a more upper echelon series, and so you know, the rest was kind of history.
Wow.
So I've really just been a poet, man, for like 5 years.
Right on, on. Our theme on this podcast this year is love letters to the city. If someone asked you, hey, write a love letter to San Francisco, what kind of things would you say?
Wherefore art thou?
If you have anything you want to read, that would be awesome.
Apparently, too much of San Francisco was not there in the first place. This dream requires more condemned Africans, or put another way, state violence rises down. Or still life is just getting warmed up. Or army life is looking for a new church and ignored all other suggestions. Or folktale writers have not made up their minds as to who is going to be their friends. This is the worst downtown yet. And I've borrowed a cigarette everywhere. I've taken many a walk to the back of a bus that led on out the back of a storyteller's prison sentence, then on out the back of slave scars, but this is my comeback phase. I left my watch on the public bathroom sink and took the toilet with me. Threw it at the first bus I saw, eating single mothers half alive. It flew through the bus line number, then on out the front of the White House. Hopefully you find comfort downtown, but if not, we brought you enough cigarette filters to make a decent winter coat. A special species of handshake lets all know who's king and what's the lifespan of uniform cloth. This coffin needs to quit acting like those are birds singing. Rusty nails have no wings, have no voice other than that of a white world dying. There are book pages in a gas pump. Hey, catchy, isn't it? The way 3 nooses is the rule, or the way potato sack masks go so well with radio codes, or the way condemned Africans fought their way back to the ocean only to find waves made in 1920s burnt up piano parts, European backdoor deals, and red flowers for widows who spent all day in the sun mumbling in San Francisco. They're red flowers, but what's the color of a doctor visit? There are book titles in the streets. Book titles like Hero, You'd Make a Better Zero, or Hey Fur Coat Lady, the President is Dead, or Pay Me Back in Children, or They Hung Up Their Bodies in Their Own Museums, and other book titles pulled from a drum solo. Run here, hero. Lied the hiding place. All the bullets in 10 precincts know where to go. There's no heaven nor any other good idea in the sky. Politics means that people did it and people do it. Understand that when in San Francisco and other places that were never really there. I bet this ocean thinks it's an ocean, but it's not. It's just 6th and Mission Street. All know who's king. King of thin things. You know, like America, I'm proud to deserve to die. I'm going to eat my dinner extra slow tonight in this police state candy dispenser you all call a neighborhood. No set of manners goes unpunished. Never mind a murderer's insomnia or the tea kettle preparing everyone for police sirens. You know, I just want to say that, you know, San Francisco's fate is tied to the people. And tied to the revolutionary potentials of the people in the, you know, the kinetic energy, or the energy made kinetic by people. And so, you know, that's where I look for the transformation. You know, you can never you can never go home again, you know. And in a way, we don't need to, you know, what San Francisco was as a group has, you know, is groovy enough ingredients to a day, to a greater a day beyond imperialism, if I may be so bold. So, you know, I just, you know, for everybody, I would just look towards, you know, whatever process you're in the middle of, making sure it's nice and revolutionary. Otherwise, they're just gonna ride this all off into oblivion, you know. And you know, I mean, like literally, we're really gonna be crying for San Francisco when it's underwater. You know what I mean?
Yeah, literally and figuratively.
You know? It's just like, man, we can't. You know, we I would love to be a groovy poet on the sideline, you know. And San Francisco is full of these kind of like just groovy, you know, just pound for pound, just interesting protagonists, you know. Right. But man, we got to do the together thing. We got to do the collective thing.
That was Tongo Eisen-Martin. On the next episode of Storied San Francisco, you'll get to know the founder of Rocket Dog Rescue, Haley Boucher. Please join us next week for episode 30. Music for Storied San Francisco is by Otis McDonald. Photography is by Michelle Kilfeather. The show is hosted and produced by me. Michelle and I have produced more than 120 episodes over the last 3 years, and you can find them all over at our website, storiedsf.com. We're on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, as well as just about everywhere you can listen to podcasts. Please subscribe to stay up to date on all the content we publish. And if you have any feedback for us, or you just want to say hi, our email is storiedsf@gmail.com. Thanks for listening. Stay strong, stay safe, and stay healthy.